Oink, oink. PJ continues to have a pig problem, but is this the year? Is this the matchup where Mr. Fleck brings home the bacon?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Is it going to be a low-scoring game? Absolutely. Is the first person to get to double digits going to have a better chance to win? Probably. Is there going to be a lot of defense and special teams plays impacting the outcome of this game? You bet your ass there is. But this is a rivalry game. The Floyd of Rosedale is on the line. I absolutely love the Iowa-Minnesota rivalry. And goddammit, give me more Big Ten West football, baby. I cannot wait for this game between the Hawkeyes and the Golden Gophers. When I start to really break this thing down, I want to start, believe it or not, with Iowa's offense, and I want to start with Iowa's run game. The Hawkeyes have kind of gotten it going here the last few weeks, especially in those big plays, those big explosive runs. You go back a couple of weeks ago where Caleb Johnson did it early against Purdue. And then you look at last week, LeSean Williams doing it in the second quarter against Wisconsin. You look at the final scores and those big chunk plays, those big chunk runs, explosive plays. Yes, I said explosive when talking about Iowa's offense. Possibly were the difference in that game and possibly were the factor that got Iowa W's in both those games against Purdue and against Wisconsin. Minnesota's got to dial it in. They cannot allow those big chunk runs. They can't allow Iowa's run game to really get going. They need to come up. They need to bring a whole bunch of guys up to the line of scrimmage and find a way to bottle up this run game. We know what the weakness of Iowa's offense is. It's putting the ball into the hands of Deacon Hill. It's putting the football in the air. So if they can continue to run the football, it puts less pressure on Deacon Hill to go out there and make plays, which is why Minnesota needs to find a way to contain this run game and put the ball in the hands of number 10. Deacon Hill this season, 27 of 70. That's 38.6% completion rate, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's the guy that you want the ball into his hands more often than maybe the running back's hands in this one. You want to get them into third and medium, third and long situations where they have to put the ball into the hands of Deacon Hill, where they have to throw the ball to some wide receivers, something that they haven't done a lot of this season. The defensive game plan is pretty easy for Joe Rossi, but it's just a matter of executing. Iowa's run game has been better these last 2 weeks. In theory, like I said, the Joe Rossi game plan is fairly simple, but executing it may be a little bit more of a challenge. Minnesota is 10th in the Big Ten against the run this season. The Gophers on average giving up 137.8 yards on the ground this season. Like if Iowa gets to 150, that's a big W for this Iowa team. And that alone, if the Iowa Hawkeyes get to 150 rushing yards, that alone could be a recipe for a Hawkeye victory. As long as we're talking about the run game, let's talk about Minnesota's run game. We're not sure on the injury status of Darius Taylor right now, but Zach Evans, I think, is a more than worthy replacement for him right now. You throw in Sean Tyler, you throw in Bryce Williams. This is a run game that has to be effective for Minnesota to go into Kinnick Stadium and pull off the upset. And I believe this is a Minnesota run game that can get going. Minnesota needs to learn the lesson from what Wisconsin didn't do early in the game last week, right? Phil Longo came out calling more passes than runs. 16 of the first 23 play calls were going through the air against Iowa. And then you saw when Braylon Allen did run the football, it was fairly effective moving the ball down the field. 18 carries, 87 yards rushing for Braylon Allen, almost a 5 yards per carry clip. Why they didn't run the ball earlier in that matchup and why they insisted on going through the air is still beyond me, and that may have cost the Badgers this game. So Minnesota, you got to learn from your buddies, well, maybe not buddies, across the St. Croix River over there in Wisconsin. And I think we know how PJ wants to play. We know PJ wants to be physical at the line of scrimmage. We know PJ wants to run the football. And I think that's what they're going to do. They're not going to come out like Wisconsin. They're not going to throw it 16 of their first 23. They're going to run it probably 18 or 19 out of their first 23. The run game is so important for Minnesota. We've seen the Gophers here over the past few seasons, and you need to go right at this Iowa Hawkeyes defense. When you look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, 9th in the Big Ten against the run this season. Now, this is still a great defense, and it is still going to be a big-time challenge for Minnesota to run the ball on Iowa, but there might be some openings there if Minnesota can get things going early, if they can win the push at the line of scrimmage, because if the Gophers get the run game going, that eases things up for Ethan Kaliakmanis. It's kind of like how it is with Iowa, right? I think Iowa's defense wants to make Ethan Kaliakmanis have the ball more. They want him to make plays. They want to dial in on the run game. I think both defenses have very similar game plans. Because if you're Ethan Kaliakmanis, like look in that game against Michigan a couple of weeks ago, 2 pick sixes in that game, and you look at the ball Hawkeyes on the other side of the field, they are salivating at the opportunity to take that football away because Iowa has some big-time matchup advantages in the secondary with guys like Hubert Agene, the turnover machine, Sebastian Castro, who I love, who's having a great year thus far, Xavier Nwampka, Quinn Schulte, and you got receivers from Minnesota that, Daniel Jackson has made some plays, but this is a receiving group that I think has failed to kind of separate from their defensive back counterparts on the other side this season. It's a Big Ten West football game. It's fairly simple. Whoever runs the football better and whoever stops the run in this game is going to win. But I got a feeling this one could come down to special teams. And when you talk about special teams, advantage Iowa because of Tory Taylor. I believe Tory Taylor is as big a part of the success of Iowa so far this season, maybe more than anybody. He's such a perfect complement to what Iowa has, that great Phil Parker defense. Because what Tory Taylor does, he pins you inside the 10. He flips the field big time back the other way, which when Iowa's kind of pinned back, they got the ball in their own 20, they got the ball in their own 30. I think his ability to bomb one to the other end of the field and completely flip the field is kind of an underrated part of his game. Because a lot of people look at those punts where it dies inside the 10 and it dies inside the 5. And that is a tremendous part of Tory Taylor's game. And it's awesome to see that. But when Iowa's offense isn't moving and they're deep in their own territory, Tory Taylor's, wow, that is a tongue twister. Tory Taylor's ability to flip the field back the other way, where maybe the opposing team says, hey, we're going to get the ball to 40, maybe near midfield. Tory Taylor says, you're going to get the ball back in touchback territory near the 25, 30-yard line. And I think that really plays into this game. Because let's say 2 times Tory Taylor gets this ball inside the 10. That means that's 2 drives. Minnesota has to, at the very least, go about 60 yards to get into field goal range, 90 or so yards to get into the end zone. Let's just cap it at 60. That's 120 yards of total offense on 2 drives that Minnesota has to get. If Tory Taylor can pin you deep, especially at a rockin' Kinnick Stadium, it's very difficult to get 2 first downs, 3 first downs, 4 first downs consecutively against this Iowa Hawkeyes defense. You combine the punting ability and what he's able to do. You combine it with this defense that is really hard to move the football on. That is a recipe for success, and it's been a recipe for success for this black and gold football team in Iowa. Both coaches and coaching staffs need to understand what this game is all about. This is not your normal football game when you play the Iowa Hawkeyes. You need to understand and kind of look back at last year's matchup as well, because I think this year's matchup is going to be very reminiscent of last year's matchup where you could have a close game down the stretch, but it's a defensive play. It's maybe a special teams play that really determines the outcome in this game. And PJ Fleck has to prepare for that. He knows that Minnesota needs to cross their T's and dot their I's. They need to be on their game when it comes to special teams because the Gopher special teams hasn't been great so far this season. You know you have to protect the football because you know that maybe it's the first one to 10. Maybe it's the first one to 13 points. wins this game. This Iowa team, they know how to play in a phone booth. They live in the phone booth. They are the phone booth. They are the phone book. They're the phone. They're everything within the phone booth. They know how to play this way. They know how to put their defense into favorable situations. They know how to maximize Torrey Taylor and his punting ability. They know that if we get the ball into the hands of Cooper DeJean on a punt return, that could be the determining factor in a football game like it was earlier this season against Michigan State. We know how Iowa plays football, and I've said it multiple times on this channel. They are going to sit across the poker table from you. They're going to look you straight in the eye, and they're going to point at you and say, you're going to make a mistake. And we're not. And we're going to sit here and we're going to wait for you to make a mistake. We're not going to play pretty football. Okay, we're not going to score a bunch of points at all. Okay, people might poke fun at us. People might make jokes. But you know what we do? We win football games because you make the mistake and we don't. I honestly believe for Minnesota to go into Kinnick Stadium and come out with a victory, they need to flip that poker table scenario. Iowa needs to make the mistake. I honestly believe that. Because if Iowa plays the way they play, mistake-free, disciplined football, great defensive football, and they get the run game going a little bit, I just don't see the Hawkeyes losing this one at Kinnick Stadium to a team like Minnesota. I just don't. Minnesota needs to find a way to get them to make the mistake, to make them play an un-Iowa type of game, especially late in this game. I don't know anything about the Big Ten West from week to week, and neither do you. And that's why this game is going to be fantastic, because these two teams, I think it's fairly unpredictable. This division is very unpredictable from week to week. I can't wait to see who comes home with the Floyd of Rosedale. I want to hear what you guys think of this matchup. Iowa and Minnesota. Big Ten West implications on the line, of course, in this matchup. Leave your thoughts on this matchup. Leave your score predictions in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. Oh, I can't wait for this one. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.